All right, welcome to the Weekend Review. We're coming to you live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. It's the program where we review some of the big stories to come out of the week, what has been making headlines, and as always, getting South Africans talking. Now, I'm your host, Liesl Wilson. Let's take a look at your headlines for today. Well, Metro Police have confirmed that one person has been injured and 4 taxis set alight in the Johannesburg CBD. Over 20 million vaccinations have now been administered in South Africa. Right, from your headlines, let's take a look at your top story for the SABC. Police Metro have confirmed that one person has been injured. 4 taxis set alight in the Johannesburg CBD. It says that 6 other taxis have been damaged at the intersection of Van Veilig and Commissioner Streets. While emergency teams and police are on high alert in the area, the cause of the violence is not yet clear. However, it's suspected to be rivalry over taxi routes.
We have indeed received information from law enforcement agencies about the outbreak of violence in the CBD of Johannesburg this morning, involving Nandue and Wata taxi associations that operate in Soweto. And to that extent, we want to strongly condemn these horrendous and barbaric acts of criminality. And we have really appealed and we emphasize our plea to law enforcement agencies that acts of criminality should be dealt with decisively, promptly, and swiftly, and perpetrators should be brought to book. And secondly, we appeal to the taxi industry. These are leaders who hold executive positions in the associations to bring violence between and amongst them to an immediate end, and consider, very importantly, lives of commuters who are innocent in this dispute, but also their own lives. And to that extent, we are monitoring the situation. We are working hard with law enforcement to make sure that we bring immediate stability to the area. Lastly, we have already contacted the provincial structures of Santago and GNTA in the province as 2 mother bodies of all associations. And we will be meeting with them tomorrow.
Right, in other news now, the National Freedom Party is in Sebokeng today to campaign for votes. Let's now cross to our reporter Zoleka Klodashe, who has more info for us. A very good afternoon to you, Zoleka. Thank you for joining us here today. I think to kickstart off this conversation, let's just contextualize the party to date in South Africa. Start us off with a brief history of the party in South Africa today.
Good afternoon, Lizal. As you correctly say, we are in Sebokeng, tracking the movements of the National Freedom Party. They're hoping to appeal to voters and speak to them about their concerns. Briefly, the context of the party, it was formed in 2011 by the late Zanele Kamagwaza Sibi. We know that she recently passed in September, and she founded the party, a breakaway from the IFP. We know that the party has a stronghold in KZN, but it hopes to advance its and stretch its branches into other areas where it hasn't really been visible, and that's why they're in Sebokeng today. We spoke to community members earlier who said that they have issues with sanitation and sewage, and we know that the South African Human Rights Commission has mentioned and had a report detailing the sewage issue in the Vaal River and how that is a violation of human rights and the people that live in the area. So joining us now to speak to us more about the party and their hopes ahead of the November 1st local government elections is the Secretary General of the party, Canon Mdlenje.
Afternoon.
You're here in Sebokeng today to speak to community members about some of their concerns. Your manifesto you launched recently, and in it you spoke about water and sanitation, and we know that the party has a stronghold in KZN. Tell us what you are promising the people of this area and this ward this afternoon.
No, thank you very much for having us. Yes, as you have rightfully said, we have launched our manifesto in KZN last week, and part of our manifesto, our promises to the people of South Africa, in particular of this area of Ward 17 influence, is that we are going to make sure that we deal decisively with the problem of sewage. We have seen sewage splitting over to the people's house, and it's uncontrolled, it's unhealthy. We are going to deal with those issues, but over and above that, we don't have street lights here. So it means at night people are in danger of getting attacked, and there's only one Apollo, which is to cater for all this phase 2, which has got about 2,700 people. So it tells you that having one Apollo is not enough. But you see yourself, the access roads, they are not tarred, they are gravel roads, and when it's raining, people cannot walk freely or drive freely. Yes, those are some of the issues that we are going to tackle. Should the people of Ward 17 in Mfuleni give us an opportunity to serve them?
And then we do know, as I mentioned, that your party was formed in 2011. You contested the 2011 municipal elections. I think you got about 644,000 votes there. But since then, the party's support has dwindled. You didn't contest in the 2016 elections. So this will be your second time contesting in the local government elections. In the 2014 elections, you managed to get, I think, 6 seats in parliament, and that has dwindled, and now you only have 2. You lost 4 seats. Tell us about how you plan to engage the electorate, and we have voter apathy as well. People in this community saying that they're not going to vote because they have lost faith, and in particular this area is led by the ANC. They have lost faith and they do not intend to vote. How do you plan to appeal to those voters?
No, it's quite correct that the NFP has seen its membership or support going down due to a number of reasons that I cannot mention it. But the fact of the matter is we are here in 2021, we are contesting these elections, and we are promising the people of South Africa, in particular of this ward, that should they give us the opportunity, they will see change. We want them to see a difference between a ward that is led by the NFP and other wards. There are a lot of challenges here. People have spoken openly, saying that they don't see a reason for them to vote. And we are saying to them, this is your opportunity to change that perception that voting is useless. We want them to make use of their vote, to take out the ANC, because the reality is the ANC has failed the people of South Africa. The ANC has failed the people of Sebokeng and all other parts of the country. So the NFP is the only alternative to the people of this area. We are appealing to them to give us an opportunity. We are going to serve them well. In areas where we have shortcomings, we'll deal with those shortcomings. And already we have indicated to our candidates, our councillor candidate, that should one of them be suspected of having stolen or being corrupt, we are going to get rid of them immediately. We are not going to wait for them to be investigated. We want to make sure, we want to set an example. We want to show the people of South Africa that there is an organization that can honestly do what it says to the people. We are going to make sure that if our councillors are corrupt, if our councillors steal the public's money, we are going to fire them immediately. We have told our members and councillors in particular that we know, all of us in South Africa, that the headquarters of corruption in South Africa is the Dutul House. So if we are corrupt, if we are attacked, we don't belong to the NFP. We must go to the ANC and take membership there, because we are not going to tolerate corruption and thuggery in the NFP.
Okay, there are many parties right now that are contesting the local government elections, and we know that key amongst the issues that political parties talk about are service delivery, and because it's the local government elections. But the issues that you're raising, and housing, unemployment, and you talk about water, sanitation, those are not issues that are specific to the NFP. How do you plan to practically deal with those issues? What are you going to say? You're doing a door-to-door campaign today. Practically speaking, how will you do that for the community?
Part of what we are going to do practically, we have taken a resolution as the organization that should a job opportunity arises in a municipality that is controlled by the NFP, we are going to conduct interviews in a language that is spoken by the majority of the people that area. For example, if here in Sebokeng people speak Eswatini, then interviews that are going to take place in municipalities here are going to be conducted in Setswana, because we want to give the opportunity in Sesotho, whatever language, because we want to give an opportunity or a preference to the local people. We don't want someone coming from Cape Town to come and take a job as a receptionist here merely because local people could not speak proper English or big words of English. We want to change that. But over and above that, we want to make sure that we create not only a conducive job opportunity, but we create jobs for the people. We want to make sure that graduates from poor families who've got a background of having no salary in that family, we are going to employ those graduates permanently in our municipalities, because we believe that giving an opportunity, a young person an opportunity to get employment on a permanent basis is going to sustain himself and his family. That's what we are going to do practically if people of this part of this era give us an opportunity as the NFP.
I spoke to a lady earlier, a community member, who said that her child died as a result of the sewage problem in the area. And this is not a problem that only one community member has spoken about. There are a number of community members that say the same thing. How do you plan to tackle that?
No, it's very heartbreaking when a parent tells you that I lost a child because she fell or he fell on a sewage. It's so easy. It's all the municipalities to do is to attend to these issues, because fixing infrastructure is what we're going to do, because some of the infrastructure is aging. That's why there's sewage all over the place. We're going to fix infrastructure. We're going to make sure that we employ people on permanent basis specifically to deal with issues of infrastructure, including water, sanitation, and the part of it which includes sewage, because sewage should not be running on the street. It's health hazard. It's not supposed to be happening 25 years in existence of local government, because we need municipalities. We have municipalities merely because they have to solve those problems. So as the NFP, we are going to deal with those issues decisively. And for us, it's important that people tell us these things so that we know by the time we take over the municipality, we know what to do. And our priority will be given to sewage problems in this particular area, and obviously the lack of service delivery in general.
Thank you, Ndate. So that was the Secretary General of the NFP, Kenan Mdleje, just talking to us about the NFP's plans ahead of the local government elections. He says that they plan to tackle corruption and that there is no place for corruption within the NFP. He also says that they plan to tackle the sewage issue, as well as increase their visibility across municipalities in the country. We know that their support has dwindled. They have now 2 seats in Parliament, down from 6, and they haven't contested the 2016 local government elections. This is their second time contesting, and they hope to have a footprint in municipalities across the country.
Thank you very much for your time today. Again, the National Freedom Party is in Sebokeng today to campaign for votes. Our reporter Zoleka Kladashe just giving us a few updates on what has transpired in the area today. Well, as we continue with our election coverage, the ANC is determined to reclaim the Tshwane Metro in Pretoria today and tomorrow. The governing party's President Cyril Ramaphosa and his deputy David Mabuza will be campaigning in the area. Let's cross live to the area where the Deputy President David Mabuza is currently speaking.
Indaba yamanzi, indaba yezindlu iphethwe iDA. Yebo, ngalesa sikhathi nina nihlale ekhaya ningavoti, nani nenkinga ngaphakathi kwa-ANC. Kodwa sithi cha, salani seniyinikeza ichance i-ANC ithathe iTshwane. Nayinikeza i-ANC. Yebo. Manje ke umfana lo uThepho lo ngiyambona uthembekile. Thepho njengoba sowubanjwe yimi kanje akekho umuntu okubulala. Akekho. Futhi uThepho ke ngiyabona niyamthanda. Qhubeka njalo ubathande labantu. Nani ngiyabona futhi niyamhlonipha. Uzoba yini ikhansela leli? Kumnyama, kubomvu. Uye lo. kungaba uyikhansela le manje ke le inkinga seziningi kakhulu kuneyinkinga zezindlu uzinakekele lapha kwamasipala kuneyinkinga zamanzi kuneyinkinga zogesi kuneyinkinga yesuwa esipilela emgwaqweni neyikhulume lapha kwamasipala manje ke abantu abadala bakhulume ngepension ukuthi bona bafuna khola mhla ka1 noma mhla ka2 bathi ngitshele ubaba uRamaphosa ngizomtshela lo minister uLindiwe Zulu ukuthi abomama bathi bafuna khola mhla ka1 or 2 ngiyawudlulisa umlayezo konje uphi lo munye nithenga udlulise eParliament yebo ngiza kwele ndaba yeyouth manje ke kusukela konamhla tsep njengoba sengifike la sosemsebenzini manje thina nabantu sesikuqashile manje ngenze ukuhole late kodwa uzohola late kodwa uzohola namhla soyasebenza manje ngifuna ukugayida nje ukuthi usebenze kanjani abantu abancane abanamsebenzi ingako bahlezi lapha sikweyihlahla babhema inyawupe manje ngicela ukuthi ubahlanganise uhambe lapha uyobatholela amaform bafome ama-cooperatives bafome amakampani wabo amancane uma sebakwenzile lokho ubaba uMaswanganye usebenza la eGauteng ngicela ukuthi uthathe inamba yakhe bese sibiza uminister we-small business ukuthi azobona ukuthi yini angayisiza labantu abasha ukuthi baqale awabo amabhizinisi ngoba phela lento uhamba ufuna umsebenzi kusho ukuthi omunye umuntu udalile lo msebenzi ngicabanga ukuthi nathi asiwudaleni umsebenzi lapha kamasipala uma nilungisa imigwaqo kufuna niyipave niqasha abantu bafake ipaving kuningi ningakwenza lapha kamasipala ukuze abantu bathole umsebenzi kodwa ke sifuna intsha iziqalela amakampani wayo ngiyacabanga ukuthi lo uzokwenza manje ke inkinga esibe nayo Tshepo abantu bayangena la bathembekile bese uma bafika endleleni basijikela uzosijikela okay
I hole what 89 I hole what 89 I hole Ariye trongong di hata marukwana tsa wala batho ariye trongong di hata marukwana tsa wala batho ariye trongong community of 89 Deputy President David Mabuza are ke le tlhalosetse hore ke ska botsa yena ke botse lena hore setjhaba sa 89 nna nga tswile ke le jiketse ke tlo le berekela ene ba ka se ntšhabisi le ba banya gore ke tšhabe ke ska le berekela ke tlo le berekela.
Well, live on your screens, the ANC determined to reclaim the Tshwane Metro in Pretoria today and tomorrow. The governing party's President Cyril Ramaphosa and his deputy David Mabuza will be campaigning in the area. On Monday, the ANC, led by Mabuza and former party Secretary General Kgalema Motlanthe, met with all structures in Tshwane. Disputes on the structure councillor candidate selection process has topped the agenda of the meeting. Obviously, on your screens, we've seen the deputy president of the party, David Mabuza, introducing a councillor to the people. Again, just instructing that the council should ensure the community has access to houses. Grant recipients, in fact, have spoken to the deputy president, asked that they be paid on the 1st. He said he would escalate the matter and find out if that was possible. Also instructing the councillor to form corporate corporations and businesses and cooperatives rather, and in assisting businesses to help the youth, help them to gain access to these businesses. He's going to speak to the minister to also help those then who have registered at large. And lastly, also touching on issues of, councillors who are elected into positions of power and change, losing focus once the mandate is achieved of them getting the role. So we'll continue to bring you more coverage on that as the day progresses. For now, though, we're going to take a quick ad break. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned.
All COVID safety protocols will be observed at all IEC voting stations on the 1st of November. Remember to mask up, put an X for your community. Every voice together.
Tea or coffee? Did you say all? Yebo sisi. I hate that word. We're constantly choosing between things. Casual or formal? Cash or card? Angeke. Petrol or diesel? I don't want all. I want and. Ngifuna impilo. I want abochomi and family. Ngifuna konke. I want it all.
Thola konke. Have it all. DSTV Premium.
More households living in extreme poverty are in desperate need of government support.
It is not just really the poorest of the poor who are struggling. The middle class has also decreased by almost 50%.
Residents of Matole informal settlement say they feel forgotten.
Toilet is on the street, there is no electricity, there is no street. It's only the passages.
We still get cold. From there, they are eating all the money. We are getting sick.
The Mangaung Metro says it's not duty-bound to assist.
Catch the agenda every weekday from 9 a.m. and on weekends from 10 a.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. This is the Week in Review with myself, Liesl Wilson. Let's continue with more news at this hour, where this week we've seen, amongst other stories, Mpumalanga MEC of Agriculture, Rural Development, Land and Environmental Affairs, Mandla Msibi, has been remanded in custody. Msibi is accused of 2 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder. The 45-year-old is alleged to have been involved in the fatal shooting of 2 people. A 3rd person was left injured during an incident that took place in August. Meanwhile, the ANC in the Eastern Cape province has defended its decision not to ask Premier Oscar Mabuyane and Public Works MEC Babawa Madikizela to step aside. A damning report released by Public Protector Busisiwe Mgwebane implicates both individuals and the provincial ANC in the unduly benefiting from funds meant for the 2018 memorial service of the late anti-apartheid stalwart Winnie Madikizela Mandela. But for more on this, we are joined by political analyst Sandile Swana for a little bit more analysis. Sandile, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you so much, Lizelle.
It's been a busy week for the ruling party at large, but let's hone in on the Eastern Cape province for now and take a look at the Premier, Oscar Mabuyane, who's back in the spotlight after his latest attempt to halt the investigations by authorities into allegations of corruption which have been leveled against him. I mean, when we look at the severity of, this, as well as where he was involved in the firing of Sindiswa Gomba for a rather similar incident. I mean, what position do you think this places on him or the ANC at large in the province?
Yeah, quite correct. Not only is this case similar to the one of Gomba, but it has been going on for a long time, and it is encouraging to hear, because it provides clarity that the Hawks say themselves that the investigation was concluded in March and passed on to the NPA to see the winnability of the case and the completeness of the case. So what this does for the province, the ANC in the province, is that unfortunately it profiles the top leadership of the African National Congress and the African National Congress itself at the center of continuing corruption in that province. As we know that during the Mandela era, the Eastern Cape led actually to the foundation of what is today called the SIU, which was the Heath Commission then. They have been leading in corruption for quite some time.
The ANC in the Eastern Cape, in the same breath, then has then defended its decision not to ask Premier Oscar Mabuyane and the Public Works MEC Babawa Madikizela to step aside. I mean, ultimately the question is, how should President Ramaphosa be dealing with the situation at this time, particularly as we head into local government elections?
Yes. The ANC has put itself in a difficult position because the way they have written out the step-aside resolution, because so many of them are implicated in a number of categories of offenses, economic and financial offenses, they've crafted that only a person who's actually charged by the police and the NPA is the one that must step aside. The ones who are found culpable by the public protector, the SIU, the Auditor General, National Treasurer, and others, can remain around basically with an explanation or something, but there is nothing urgent about them stepping aside.
So when we look at the timing of all of this, I mean, we saw in an interview with the SABC back in May, it was Magashule claimed that Mabuyane, in fact, had benefited from proceeds of crime from a businessman. So when we look at all the information that's come to light, come to the fore to date, I mean, many are the view that, there are individuals, particularly Ace Magashule, who is behind this. I mean, what do you think this also represents for the party, particularly with the factions that also exist?
It would be unfortunate for the faction of the African National Congress, which is in power, which is the Cyril Ramaphosa faction, of which Oscar Mabuyane is part of that faction, to then say somebody who is part of the losing faction is actually controlling the NPA and state authority, state investigative organs and state security agencies for that matter. That would be an unfortunate allegation. It's also unfortunate for any other politician to come forward and say any person is actually manipulating the NPA, manipulating the Hawks and so on and so forth. That narrative, we heard it during the Mbeki era. Zuma came up with that narrative in trying to defend himself that state organs are being used by Mbeki against him. And when Mbeki was recalled from power, it was for that reason of abusing state organs to pursue his enemies. An allegation that I don't know if it has been proved, but I've not seen the proof up to today. So this allegation by Mabuyane is unfortunate, and the Hawks have provided an explanation of where the case is. There's no investigation at the moment. The investigation was concluded in March. The matter is actually with the NPA. The EFF has gone to the police station to report the case, perhaps not knowing, not having inquired from the NPA how far they are in processing this case.
So, Sandile, then the province at large, I mean, we're looking at stalwarts like Walter Sisulu, Oliver Tambo, Albertina Sisulu. I mean, you've got Raymond Mhlaba, even Steve Biko and Winnie Madikizela Mandela herself, that hail from the province. When we look at, how the province has perhaps produced such astute leaders and some of the challenges that are deeply ingrained, with poverty and inequality at large, what do these dynamics reflect about the issues surrounding leadership and corruption within the province? I think this all comes as the party's image again comes to the fore, again as we head to local government elections.
The Eastern Cape, unfortunately, from its history, had a brain drain sustained brain drain for a long time. You'll remember that Oliver Tambo, Walter Sisulu, Nelson Mandela, in essence, flourished in their careers, political careers, not in the Eastern Cape, but in Gauteng. A lot of the Robert Sobukwe who are from the Eastern Cape did not flourish politically in the Eastern Cape. They flourished in Gauteng and the surrounding areas. So the Eastern Cape, perhaps due to the severity of land dispossession and the colonial wars, etc., the native population there had been dispossessed of economic opportunities, and such that any gifted person would have left. Unfortunately, at independence, there was no serious program that we know of until today of actually saying how do you then start regaining brain capacity, regaining skills and retaining those skills in the province and repatriating those skills that can be repatriated, etc., etc. So the end result of it is that there is a clear, evident, self-evident dearth or gap of shortage of leadership in that province as we speak today, to the point that wealth in the Eastern Cape is perceived as something that you create through criminal conduct that is conducted through the political party, especially the African National Congress.
All right, thank you very much for those thoughts. I think moving on from the Eastern Cape province, let's take a look at the issue surrounding MEC Mandla Msibi. Of course, we've seen the decision to release the MEC Msibi has been taken in consideration on the seriousness of the charges that had been leveled against him. I mean, in Nelspruit, where the party's Mpumalanga elections head and now suspended MEC for Agriculture, Rural Development, Land and Environmental Affairs, Mandla Msibi is facing charges of murder. I mean, how is this also a serious blow for the party as we speak?
Yes, I think, there are some obvious aspects of this which the Secretary General has pointed out. This Mandla Msibi was the one in charge of managing their election campaign in the province. At this late hour, 2 weeks before the elections themselves, he is now not sick, but arrested and is in prison because of at least two matters that we know of, and somebody else apparently who's been severely injured. So right now, it has got two clear implications. One, operationally, you don't have that manager who was working there, so somebody else has got to catch that ball that is falling. Two, the reputation of the party, I believe by now, is cemented in that province as a party that is heavily implicated in crime generally, and more particularly murder.
Sandile, I want to, then move away from Nelspruit and Mpumalanga and then focus on Gauteng as well, because also in Gauteng we've seen that the ANC in Gauteng has had to deal with another crisis involving a sit-in at the Lutuli House of Frustrated Military Veterans, and also looking at the implications thereof. Obviously, they're claiming the government had intended to their welfare as had been promised after they'd met with Deputy President David Mabuza a few weeks previously. So I think in the wake of the hostage situation that unfolded in Centurion later this week, many perspectives have also come through. But obviously, some of the view that it also raises concerns around state security at large. But it's another fire that the party has been dealt with. This, as we are about 2 weeks away come local government elections. Well, what's your perspective on what is transpiring on that end as well?
I think there are at least two perspectives that you can look at this thing from. One perspective from the perspective of the nation and the state, that this year especially, we have witnessed, including the insurrection, as Ramaphosa called it in July, that the ruling party and the ruling elites more broadly are losing grip of national security and state security. They have no grip, anything can happen. As an example, with the so-called hostage drama, the question that arises is, what type of intelligence did the Minister of Defense, Deputy Minister of Defense, and the Minister of quote-unquote intelligence in the presidency, Gungubele, have before entering that meeting? What was their assessment of the security risk in that environment? So it shows again that our leaders are operating in the dark. They are not using professional intelligence services in South Africa today. And our security as a nation is in jeopardy. On the other hand, you can look at it from the point of view of the military veterans, and they are not the only category that is a victim of poor leadership in South Africa. from the start in the early 90s, it was clear that you are going to repatriate from outside of the country into the country people who have skills of operating in the bush, who have no economic skills, etc., etc. So at that time, calculations should have been done to say what package, financial package on a year-on-year basis has got to be put in place to resettle these people, rehabilitate them, and make sure that they are financially secure inside of South Africa rather than in the bush where they have been for many, many years. So there are many people who are like these veterans who have not actually been catered for by the settlement, more especially between the National Party and the African National Congress. And if you look at parliamentary records, you look at scholarly records, this issue has been going on for a long time. Scholars have studied this issue, and it shows incompetence of the present government.
Well, then, Sandile, in conclusion, with concerns of the relationship between the department and military veterans at large, based on a few issues, including the result of a few unfulfilled promises by the department, where to from here? How could this relationship be perhaps improved upon? It's a crucial time for the country as well at large.
This is one relationship among many of a similar nature, as I've already said.
Yeah.
You cannot solve a financial problem with talk. These people are suffering actual hunger, actual poverty. Many MK and other APLA and other veterans of the Liberation Army, more especially, live in desperate circumstances with no place to die and no place to be buried as we speak today. Some of the senior members of the African National Congress are no longer welcome at funerals of military veterans because they are seen as people who have renounced and left and thrown the veterans into the dogs. So there is no solution for a financial problem. That is not a financial and economic solution. So the nation as a whole has got to agree that an actuarially worked out solution for several decades has got to be implemented on short notice so that these outcasts of the liberation struggle and the freedom of 1994 are actually included in the Commonwealth of South Africa.
Sandile Swane, thank you very much for your time today. Again, this week we've seen, amongst other some of the top stories, Sandile Swane, political analyst, giving us some of the big political stories to come out of the week. Thank you very much once again for your time. Let's have a quick ad break. We'll continue with more news on the other side. Stay tuned. This is the Week in Review. Welcome back. Let's continue with more news now. The Eswatini National Association of Teachers has confirmed that police and soldiers have been deployed in schools in the country to monitor the situation. It comes after learners from different schools joined the pro-democracy protests. It's alleged that more than 82 schools are closed countrywide due to the ongoing protests. Now, learners have reportedly vandalized some of the schools. The pupils are now also refusing to write exams, saying that they have lost study time due to the unrest. Now, there are also reports that social media was shut down in the country yesterday. But to contextualize this and for more information, we're joined by editor of Eswatini News, Zweli Martin Dlamini. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us here on the SABC. I mean, Zweli, we understand that there was a social media blackout this week. Do tell us what is the situation currently as we're speaking?
Yes, yesterday there was a network shutdown in Eswatini, but it went for some few hours. This was in the midst of the crackdown against the protesters. It started around 9 a.m. yesterday.
Do we perhaps understand the reasons for the blackout? What information is unfolding at this point?
Yes, Eswatini is in the midst of political unrest. The army has been deployed in various towns, in schools. The protest started about a month ago. It started whereby children in various schools were protesting, demanding democratic reforms. You will understand that Eswatini is ruled by King Mswati as an absolute monarchy, and the political parties are banned from participating in elections. So for almost 50 years now, Swazis are no longer or are not able to freely elect their own government. So as time goes on with the emergence of the online media, the citizens are now enlightened, and now they understand that they have a right to democratically elect their own government. And what is more interesting is the fact that even young children, school children, students are now demanding democratic reforms because they understand that even if they can go as far as the university, chances are slim that they might get employment under the status quo. So the situation now is terrible. In fact, it is going back to what happened in June, whereby we saw around close to 100 people being killed in the midst of the political unrest.
All right, so Zweli, you've spoken about the youth participation as well, regarding these protests. And we've also seen reports that the army has been deployed in some schools. I mean, is this true as well? And walk us through the reasons. Students are also obviously writing exams at this point. So how has that also affected the academic year at large?
Yes, of course. It started, the deployment of the army started about 2 weeks ago. And this happened whereby police were deployed in various schools, and then the army was also deployed. We will see some soldiers invading schools in various schools and towns, arresting children, taking them to the police station, assaulting people. It was a terrible situation, and even now the deployment of the army is ongoing, and the situation is almost getting tense.
So Zweli, I mean, what are the casualties that have been reported? What do the injuries look like as we speak?
Can you repeat again? I lost you.
I was just asking about the casualties to date, the reports coming through on the amount of people that have been injured and affected. I mean, what does that look like as we speak?
As far as we understand, we have some reports, confirmed reports, that hospitals are being flooded due to the ongoing political unrest. And we've spoken to the president of the Swaziland Democratic Nurses Union, because as you might be aware, the protests are intensifying in towns like Mbabane, Manzini and Matapa. These are the major towns in Eswatini. So what happened yesterday, soldiers assaulted and they even shot people at close range. Some of these casualties are admitted at Manzini Nazarene Hospital. Most of them are in Manzini Nazarene Hospital. And for now, the numbers that we have, it's about 20 people were injured. The deaths, even though we haven't confirmed the actual number, because we normally rely on statistics from our sources in hospital. Then we confirm with the president of the Democratic Nurses Union. But as far as we understand, about 4 people have died, and this includes the Kumbi or public transport employee who was shot at Luyengo about 2 days ago.
All right, so Zweli, just lastly then, I mean, you executing your job and your day-to-day unfoldings of the newsroom, I mean, how did the blackout affect you as a journalist? How are the protests also affecting you currently as you pursue your job?
Yes, of course. As a journalist, it's difficult to do your job in the midst of these political tensions or unrest. But what we normally do, the role played by the citizens is very huge, and our sources, because you will understand that with the emergence of technology, most people have cell phones. What they normally do, they take the videos and pictures. Even if the internet has been disrupted or disconnected, our sources manage to take those videos, and once the internet is back, they send those videos and pictures to us. Then our role in that regard is to conduct the necessary investigation and verification to get the real figures or confirm those videos so that we can have credible information. But what I can say is the fact that as a journalist these days, the role played by the citizen is very huge, and it's almost important because the people are now demonstrating willingness to be freed from this dictatorship rule.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to leave the conversation there. Thank you very much for joining us. We've seen the Eswatini National Association of Teachers confirming that police and soldiers have been deployed in schools in the country to monitor the situation unfolding there. It also comes after learners from different schools joined the pro-democracy protests, alleged that about 82 schools are closed countrywide due to the ongoing protests. Again, learners reportedly having vandalized some schools, but pupils also refusing to write exams, saying that they have lost study time due to the unrest that is unfolding there. Again, I want to thank Zweli Martin Dlamini for his analysis. Again, the editor of the Eswatini News for the latest coming from that region. Well, let's take a quick ad break. We continue with more news on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. More news at the South. The Democratic Alliance took its campaign to Emalahleni in Mpumalanga. Our reporter Amungile Dumako caught up with DA leader John Steenhuisen.
The story is relatively the same in towns and cities across the country. Service delivery is collapsing. People are not getting the services they want. Towns without water, sewage running down the streets, people sitting without jobs. They need the government that's going to get things done there. And they have been coming out in their numbers to listen to the DA's message of hope and change and to how we have a plan to get things done in each of those towns.
What's that plan?
Well, that plan is set out in our manifesto. It's a 7-point plan. It focuses on the 7 basic things you need in any municipality to get it working. Starting with clean and accountable governments, a safe community, a community that's delivering services, a community that is making itself electricity independent of the national government's failings, ensuring that you've got local economic development so we can attract jobs and lots of them, and then ensuring that we have opportunities for young people to be able to advance in those towns and cities around South Africa.
Another thing that stands out when one drives around Emalahleni and Steve Tshwete, the issue of water continues to trouble locals here.
Yes, water is a big problem, and we're a water scarce country. We're going to have to change our relationship with water, but municipalities are going to have to invest a lot more in water infrastructure. There's no use fixing the upstream and reservoirs if the water reticulation system, the pipes, are bursting every week. Just this last week, in 4 to 5 municipalities, people sit for days without water because their water leaks. Pipes are breaking. Some of them are 40 years old. They've never been replaced. We need to make sure we replace that infrastructure and roll out infrastructure to areas that don't have water. And this means that municipalities are going to have to spend more money on the basics, not on 23 million rand stadiums and 2.7 million rand Wendy houses. They're going to have to spend it on basic services so that people have the dignity of those basic services.
Let's quickly go to the Eastern Cape now. Oscar Mabuyan has been in your lips for quite a while now with the 450,000 rand Winima Tikizela Mandela's Memorial Service. The DA seems very concerned about this. What are you going to do?
Well, we've already made sure that we are going to go and lay criminal charges. We're also going to be pursuing this matter through the parliamentary committees in Parliament. I think that it is an outrage that you've got a Premier who stands accused of that on the back of a MEC who's now in jail for allegedly for murder. On top of all these scandals that we've seen around the expenditure on stadiums, on infrastructure that has not been serviced. Yesterday I was in Limpopo. There's a project there with a water reservoir. It's been 95% complete for the last 5 years. In Mogalakwena as well, the stadium that was built there has just simply collapsed. There's no service delivery there. All of these things show that you've got government in place in these areas and towns that cannot get things done. We, on the other hand, have got a good story to tell in Midvaal, in Kocha, in Nelson Mandela Bay, and the city of Cape Town about how we're actually getting things done for people in those municipalities.
Yesterday we saw, in fact the night before yesterday, a hostage incident happening with the military veterans and the 2 ministers at St. George's Irene. What's your DA's view on what we've seen come out of that hotel?
Yeah. Well, let me just say that from the outset, I don't condone violence and I don't condone unlawful behavior at all. But I do understand the frustration that those veterans and others are feeling. They've been made promises year after year, election after election, that they're going to be taken care of, and those promises never materialize. And the frustration is now boiled up to such a degree that they are taking drastic action like they took. And I think it's time that government got serious about their concerns. I'm busy dealing with a matter in Pretoria where military veterans were given houses by the government. They were then evicted from those houses, put in temporary accommodation. The National Department is not paying the rent there. They're about to be evicted again. And the National Department just won't do anything about it. This is no way to treat military veterans. It's no way to treat people who have been a part of defending democracy in South Africa. And I think it's a disgrace. And I think maybe government should take some of the 1.7 billion rand they spend every year on VIP protection, 8 million rand per VIP per year, and spend that on our veterans, spend it on our pensioners, spend it on our young children in South Africa, instead of protecting fat cats and keeping them safe while the rest of us have to deal with crime on a daily basis.
Well, in other news, Pan-Africanist Congress star Azania is on a campaign trail in Soweto. The party is formed back in 1959 by the late Robert Sobukwe. There were earlier political gains, but for more on this, our reporter Nhlanhla Kgatlana spoke to the party leader Mzwanele Nyontso.
All of us, we must repent. All of us, we must know that this organization does not belong to us. It belongs to the dead, the living and yet to be born. This organization is not only an organization, it's heritage. And as you said it, we played a huge role in the freedom of this country. And we cannot allow ourselves to be teared apart by petty factional politics or by our own egos. We must understand that the party is bigger than all of us. Leaders come and go, but we have made the clarion call. We have called everyone to come back and regularize his or her own membership where they reside and be part of this great freedom, this great ship of freedom, the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania. We are going to have a changed PAC, a revived PAC, a stronger PAC come 1st of November, you'll see.
I mean, we were together in Mpumalanga at some point, and you guys, you and Narius Muloto, I remember seeing you guys laugh. What happened? What happened that, it caused the party? And at that time, I remember very well that there was a lot of numbers of PAC members who came to that conference.
We've been laughing a lot together. Remember, this thing is not personal. It's political. We are not enemies. We can only be opponents. We've been laughing. We've been talking. Anyway, aware that I personally campaigned for him to be the Secretary General. I led his own campaign. I personally approached him to contest and be Secretary General of the PAC. But truth is now things have changed, and the structures of the PAC have decided to have other leaders, and that we cannot stop. We PAC members are around. PAC members are back in PAC in full force. That's why I'm saying everyone, whether you were misled consciously or unconsciously and work against the collective of the PAC, this is the opportunity to come back home, work for the PAC, build this great ship of freedom. Including Narius, he must repent, accept that PAC is bigger than him, accept that he cannot tell people that he is a leader. People must tell you that you must lead them. It doesn't work like that.
You guys are going to go to Shawela from here. What is it that you're going to tell people which is different? I mean, we've heard a lot of rhetoric. We'll bring services and so forth. But how are you going to ensure that, post-elections, let's say if you guys manage to be, like you said earlier, that you're gunning for being king makers, how are you going to ensure that, post-elections people are happy with your work?
Firstly, we are going to tell them that they must vote for PAC. We'll ask for their votes. We will tell them that the 27 years of betrayal must end on the 1st of November. We'll tell them that it's time for them to change and vote for the PAC, because they have been voting. They have been given promises, and those promises were not fulfilled. So we're coming here to Shawela. We are also here to check the legitimacy, or if it is true that where the president of the ANC and president of the country is coming from, there is no load shedding. If that is true, that means we are indeed in a banana republic.
How are you going to ensure that you address the issue of electricity in Soweto?
Now remember, the problem of electricity is man-made. It's also the problem from the municipalities. Why are the people not allowed to buy electricity directly to Eskom. Because this thing of third party, when the municipality must buy electricity to Eskom and then sell it to the consumers out there, is a real confusion. People must be given an opportunity to buy electricity directly to Eskom. Otherwise, we'll always have this load shedding. When people do not have money, the municipality would go and switch off the houses of people, including mortuaries and so on. So we must get the electricity directly from Eskom and then address the problem. The elephant in the room is what is happening in all these parastatals. They are politically, they serve the interests of political affiliation of political parties, and as a result, people are being manipulated in those parastatals. So it must be addressed. Electricity is not a problem. The problem are people who are in charge of Eskom.
Let's leave it there for you today. It has been an absolute pleasure, as always, from myself, Liesl Wilson, and the rest of the team. Until next time, for a look at the week ahead, it's goodbye for now.